So this land acknowledgement will mean even more to you. Some of you will have seen this one before. It's a land acknowledgement that Calgary Reads has made, and actually one of our summer interns made it for us. So enjoy. So the beautiful sights of Calgary and area make me think of what our friends in BC are going through right now with all of the devastation and flooding that's happening. And I don't know, I think we can't take for granted the land upon which we live, and so often, sadly, we do. So I don't know what happened to that land acknowledgement, Natalie, but it seems to always very abruptly now just suddenly be over. We may have to go back to the archives and see what's happening there. Mokinstis, as you saw on that short little video, is the coming together of the elbow and the bow. This is Calgary, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the Little Free Library and the relationship to Calgary Reads. But our big free library is sitting right at the corner of the Elbow River and the Bow River, which is very sacred Blackfoot land. And we wanted to tell you a little bit of the story of how things began here in Calgary with the Little Free Library, and then we'll turn it over to Greg so we can hear about what's happening around the world. So this was in 2013 when we had first read about the Little Free Library. And of course, as Calgary Reads staff, being major book lovers and always looking for good community development ideas, we were incredibly surprised and delighted when Todd Bowles, who was the founder of the very first Little Free Library, which he built for his mom, we invited him to Calgary to really inspire us to get some Little Free Libraries into Calgary. And there's a picture here as well of Sherry McCauley in front of the mic with the gray hair, and Sherry has since passed away, and so has Todd, which makes me very sad that these two influential people who helped make these first Little Free Libraries appear. The pictures from this event, we had an event at a school. We invited 5 artists. We built the libraries on site. Then the artists designed them. All of those libraries were given out to schools, and that was the beginning of 5 Little Free Libraries in Calgary. Over time, we then put 84 Little Free Libraries into Calgary, and we mapped which communities did not have a library, which were those book deserts where families were not having easy access to books. And we took out a grant from the Calgary Foundation to get the materials to build 84 libraries. And now in Calgary, there's well over 400 Little Free Libraries, many of them mapped on the national big map that it indicates where libraries are around the world, but many of them not mapped. But we have encouraged Little Free Library stewards to register with Calgary Reads at the very least, so that we can let them know when we have our big book sale. They're one of the first people to be invited to come and take away as many free books as they possibly need. This, as a result of our enthusiasm for the Little Free Library, and this picture here, you see the little library which that was my little free library. So it was one of the original 5 that showed up in Calgary. And that really was the seed that made us dream about the Big Free Library. So the Big Free Library, most of you know about, it is the little red reading house that is in Inglewood, where every child can come inside and pick a free book, take it home, write their name on it, keep it forever, and begin to build their home library. So it works under the very same principles. People donate books, people get to take free books. It just happens to be a little free library that has been put on steroids and grew very, very big. Is there another slide there, Natalie? Yeah, there's a few shots from the inside of the Big Free Library. And this Big Free Library has got people so excited, just like Todd's original first little library inspired thousands and thousands of them around the world. Our Big Free Library, we have now built 7 little, let's say, mid-sized free libraries in agency partner locations. And we have, again, strategically put these reading place affiliates, we call them, in those neighborhoods where we know those furthest from opportunity families live. So Forest Lawn, the East Village, Bowness, downtown, Whitehorn. We're just finishing our latest reading place in Bridgeland at the Women's Center. And I just think it's pretty amazing when a small idea takes hold and grows and blossoms into something amazing. And we're so excited that Greig is here to tell us, you know, we used to know about what was going on at the library. Now we are going to be able to say once again that we know what's happening and where things are at, and that we are part of an incredibly amazing tribe of people who love to read and want to ensure that books don't get stuck on shelves. They get out into community and circulate all over the place so we can enjoy the pleasures of reading. So that's a little bit about our story, and that's enough for now about Calgary Reads and our role in planting little libraries across our city. Greig has been in his role with the Little Free Library for the past 2 years. So I'm sure you'll tell us some about the pleasure and pain of coming to lead an organization in the midst of a pandemic. You have put a lot of smiles on Calgarians' faces. So thank you for continuing to lead this organization. And today we're going to hear not just about sort of what's happening with that system of Little Free Libraries, but some of their new initiatives that are really paying attention to what we all need to be more aware of. And that is the need for children or anyone to see reflected in the books that they read, the color of their face, the stories that they know. And diversification of content within books is a priority of Calgary Reads, and I think a priority for many of our affiliates and our agencies and our schools who have come to really pay attention and want to invest in making sure that every child experiences the windows, the mirrors, the doors that need to be a part of the literature that they're exposed to. So Greig, thank you so much from all of us in Calgary for agreeing to be our 9th speaker of our 369 series, and I turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Stacy. I think the pressure has just been, raised significantly in terms of what to do from a presentation perspective. So hopefully I do well. And again, thank you so much, all of you, for taking the time today to chat. Just in general, what I kind of overlay for you a little bit of what we want to try to share today. We'll go back over a little bit of history just to remind everybody of where we've kind of been as an organization. Talk and provide a little bit of insight as it relates to the stewarding process, and many of you are probably familiar with all of that, but it goes to our expansion, and our ability to execute has been critically dependent on a volunteer network of people we call stewards. And then talk a little bit about some 4 different cases in 4 different sort of geographic environments that we are proud to share because it gives an indication a little bit of Little Free Library, while there is a tendency to look at it as to be blunt, a white suburban phenomenon, we've been able to begin to transform that or allow for that evolution from an execution perspective to do more than just necessarily that. Now, we definitely have a long way to go, and goals in front of us are significant in terms of our desires for impact. But these cases, I think, give you an example of sort of what some of the things, different things that we're doing in different locations. And then, as Stacy said, do want to share a little bit about a new program we call Read in Color that was launched a little over a year ago. Tell you a little bit about the origin story for why it came about, why we felt it was very important for us as an organization, what the components are, and some early indicators, from a success perspective, and share some learning from that. And then definitely allow for whatever questions you might necessarily have. So I guess I had forgotten that Todd had visited you. That's a wonderful photograph, Stacy, of his presence there. So 100% right. The organization was founded by Todd Bowles in 2009 in Hudson, Wisconsin, which is actually where we are right now, or where I am right now. And that's where our headquarters is, and built in honor of his mom, who is an avid reader and an educator. Todd kind of stumbled on something. I think that he and his partners have been looking for a variety of different ways to engage community, and have been playing around with some concepts, but the Little Free Library definitely took off, and we struck gold around that. The organization in 2012 became recognized as a 501c3 corporations, which in the United States, that basically means you're a nonprofit organization. And we've been fortunate to be recognized by a number of leading literacy organizations, the Library of Congress here in the US, the National Book Foundation, and actually last year recognized by the World Literacy Foundation, of kind of the things that we've been able to necessarily do. And we are really proud of that recognition for sure. This is probably a little bit US centric in the sense of we're in all 50 states in the United States. I should have checked. I'm not sure if we're in every district in Canada, or every province in Canada. I think we are, but I could be wrong. We are in 110 countries now. So you can see here on the map, anything that's not gray is a country that we're in. We would definitely say that we have a larger presence in countries where English is the primary language, but we are a global organization. And in fact, last year, as you can see at the bottom of this map here, we now have a Little Free Library that is at the science station in Antarctica. And so we are now on all 7 continents on the globe. We're not in space yet. I'm trying to figure out how we do that, but that's one of those goals out there. And so we're quite excited about the breadth and spread of the organization and how we've been able to hopefully help folks like yourselves share and inspire people for a love of reading. And in fact, last July, I think we crossed another milestone for Little Free Library, where we installed the 125,000th Little Free Library. So, as our organization has matured and whatnot, as organizations grow, missions and goals and visions and whatnot evolve without a doubt. And, I saw, the pictures you shared were great about how people built and created their own Little Free Library, designed their own, and creativity was a very big part of Todd's earlier vision about the organization. And that's not to say that we don't encourage, and in fact, we support people building their own Little Free Library. We put plans on how to do that if you want on our website and the like. But as we've evolved as an organization, we've really kind of begun to focus on really being a catalyst, for that community development aspect. But that building of community has a focus, and that focus is on inspiring readers and expanding book access. And so, while at one point in time, and you can go to our Instagram page and you can see these incredible little free libraries, we want to be, I'd not say cautious, but we definitely are focused on, we don't want to be the design, I guess, to overshadow what the fundamental goal really is about putting in a little free library, which is getting books in the hands of people to read, and potentially books into children's hands or people's hands that may not necessarily be served well by traditional book distribution systems. And by that, I mean libraries or school libraries or, bookstores and that kind of thing. And here, as I say, one of the joys I have, before the pandemic, was able to travel for a number of events and whatnot. And there's nothing better than kids, right? And their eyes and their smiles when they see new books and they know they can bring it home and read them. And this is just one of the examples. I think this was in Oklahoma a little while ago with through our Impact Library program. So I'm going to step back and chat a little bit about what is a steward. Basically a steward for us is a volunteer. What had started historically as individuals doing things in their communities has evolved a little bit. So we now have organizations that are stewards for large groups of libraries in and of themselves, have individuals that volunteer for that organization to steward those libraries. And we're going to talk about some of those examples necessarily. But a steward is a key to our growth as an organization. We have, 12 people here in Hudson, Wisconsin. So, without volunteers and without stewards, we don't do what we do, right? I mean, it just doesn't necessarily happen. So the steward, be it an individual or organization, is a critical aspect of the success of the Little Free Library platform. And what the steward does is it's sort of the glue, right, of a little bit of to make things work, right? It's the person that connects the physical box with the community, but also can connect that box with us through themselves, right? They're part of how you mentioned, some of your libraries are registered and some are not in Calgary. That steward's the person that kind of drives that process, right? Makes that connection happen. And there are really some pretty key benefits to that, being part of that network. Without a doubt, the opportunity to share best practices and be plugged in terms of other stewards and learn from that collective experience and that collective network. There's also the benefits. We have been doing a little bit more, and I think more recently in Canada, in fact, of doing book giveaways and providing books for stewards. And what we're really excited about right now is we're in the process of doing a soft launch of a mobile application, which would allow for users and whatnot to be able to find a Little Free Library that's near them and engage them. And we're really excited about the opportunity to bring a little bit of technology to the organization through a steward and connect the stewards and us and the patrons and whatnot. It's a pretty exciting time for us, as a matter of fact. Steward also helps with book sourcing. Stacy, you mentioned the fact of, and it's great, library organizations connect with stewards in the community and give them access or provide them access when libraries are culling books, and to be able to provide that as a source. In most instances, sourcing is not necessarily a challenge, but in some areas it is. We encourage the stewards to, work within their communities, and there are a number of different ways to tap into that community's strength and resources, whether it's asking friends, asking neighbors, But not only that, there are other nonprofit organizations that are interested in standalone projects to support nonprofits or initiatives at a community level, whether it's, things like Kiwanis or Rotary or Lions, or faith communities, or even businesses necessarily look for things to necessarily do things and support. So we encourage, the stewards to, from a successful perspective, to make sure and take a look at the books that they're providing. Encourage them to refresh them if they're not moving, to keep track of what things move and what things don't move. You mentioned earlier, Stacey, and we're going to talk a little bit later about, windows and mirrors and sliding doors. There's no earlier indication of the books aren't reflective of the community in the sense that they're just sitting in a little free library and not moving. So, we really encourage people, our stewards, to keep an eye out for that. And and that sourcing also helps get engagement in terms of community and usage, and that positive reinforcement is really critical to the success. So, when people see books that they're interested in a little free library and take one out, they're more inclined to put some other ones back in, and a little free library can become more self-sustaining. So that curation thing is a pretty critical thing about stewarding. And lastly, unfortunately, I don't think Calgary is any different than where we are in Minnesota and in Wisconsin or elsewhere, but there's needs some maintenance, and some need to be either hinges tightened or paint touched up or those kinds of things. So that's also a pretty important thing from a steward perspective in terms of what we do. And again, I share this as another image. We'll have a few more. The joy of somebody finding something exciting to read. There's nothing better than yet another happy customer finding a book in a little free library. So I want to now shift gears a little bit with that baseline sort of background and history on things, to talk a little bit about some examples of different sort of geographies or communities using Little Free Library and using it to success, right, in terms of providing added book access and reader inspiration and the like. So there are really sort of four cases I'm going to walk through. One is with our good friends in Chicago, Neighbor to Neighbor Literacy Project. This is something that just started only a couple of years ago. Actually, all of these are pretty recent in terms of their initiatives. So you have an urban environment of the city of Chicago, in particular, South Side and West Side of Chicago. We're going to share a little bit about the literacy network of Greater Cincinnati. Here's an organization that actually was founded and been around for a long time to help provide tutoring support, most likely, and educational support for students and or adults that were learning how to read the English language and the like. And it's an interesting example of use of the Little Free Library to not only transform that, but get books out in the community. So, but that's definitely a much more of a suburban story. We're going to talk about the Ojai Valley, definitely a more rural installation. This is in Southern California, kind of Central California, and share their experience in that one is directly connected with the library. And then the last example is a more recent one that we started, last, I guess, this spring, May, something along those lines, in the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota, in partnership with Oglala Dakota College and their library system for the community college there. So let's talk a little bit about the Windy City, the city of Chicago. So this is a great example, much like you shared, Stacey, sort of the start, right? Somebody getting excited about a concept, and while Todd has passed away about 3 years ago now, it's interesting, the concept, right, of a Little Free Library can be infectious, right, and get people really sort of excited about things. So this colleague and a dear friend, Nancy, she was actually visiting her sister on it was North Carolina or South Carolina. And there was a Little Free Library right outside her, in her sister's neighborhood, and she saw it and was kind of like, what was that? And, curious, and her sister explained a little bit more about what Little Free Library was and its concept. And, Nancy is again, well, no surprise, an avid reader, and, oriented around doing well in a community or helping out in a community. So when she returned to Chicago, she said, I'd love to be able to do something in my community. Now, Chicago, a little bit different than most places in North Carolina. You need to deal with things like sidewalks and concrete and asphalt. So it's not like you're necessarily going to just dig a hole and put one up, especially when in Nancy's case, she lived in an apartment building there. So she started working with and found support with a local park right around the corner from where she was, and navigated the park system, which in the city of Chicago can be something to navigate, and got permission to install what is here one of the first 2 little free libraries that she necessarily installed in the city of Chicago. And this is right around, if you're familiar with Chicago at all, you may have heard of an area called the Magnificent Mile, which is, the high-end, not only real estate, but shopping area around there. And this library is not that far away from it, right around the corner from actually a public library as well. And Nancy saw how it was used, right? And saw the variety of individuals that came up. And in particular, this individual, this man who was coming to visiting the library, in fact, didn't have a home to return to. And as she would update and provide, additional books and whatnot, and when they would cross paths, he was always excited about checking things out and seeing what new book there was there that he could borrow and read and necessarily return. And as Nancy saw this experience more and more, and saw and recognized things, began to come to understand that, too often we take book access for granted, right? We assume that people can necessarily go to a local library or go to a bookstore or get on Amazon or what have you and buy a book or borrow a book and that kind of thing. But in many instances, there are many people in communities that is not a given, right? That the officialdom of a library system is a scary thing, right? Filling out forms and applying for a library card just doesn't work. Or potentially people are not on a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday schedule, so access to libraries isn't something that can necessarily work within their schedules. So it came to Nancy, and Nancy had recently retired from a financial services position, and struck her as like, what? This is something that the city of Chicago could definitely use more of. She took it on herself that this was going to become her mission. She formed a nonprofit, Neighbor to Neighbor Literacy Project in the city of Chicago. And this, I think, was started so soon after I joined Little Free Libraries. It was about fall of 2019. And Nancy was relentless. She was passionate. Persistence was a key word for her. I mentioned, the city parks in Chicago is notorious for being slow and needing to get permission. She worked with and discovered new literacy organizations to partner with. She found schools to work with. She found funders. We've helped her out a little bit from a funding perspective. And so from this little library here that you see, you can now see on the map here, all of those are little free libraries that have been installed in the city of Chicago over the last couple of years. I think Nancy's now, my notes say 100, and I know in my last chat with her, she's well over 125 locations. And they're all tended to by either local community organizations that do other things, or an outreach, but all of them are supported by volunteers, either stewards or organizations in the city of Chicago, which again, is a very urban environment. So I'm going to shift from that one to the next example, which is
Greg, I wonder if maybe we could just share quickly. We had a comment from the chat. You talked about how these little free libraries can be so infectious. We had a comment from Lynn in the chat, who's in the Shawnee Evergreen Community Association.
Sure.
And they were able to install 6 little free libraries, she said, thanks to an Activate YYC grant this summer. And then since that project, she said 2 residents built 2 more libraries for spring installation with their own materials. And she said, we're thrilled to see the enthusiasm and participation growing.
Right. No, absolutely. It really is true. And it's and again, I shared this example literally. So Nancy saw this at visiting a friend, her sister in North Carolina. And what was it? And oh, by the way, and what a neat concept. And then saw it and grew and grew and grew. And good news is it's a healthy infectious thing as opposed to an unhealthy infectious thing, without a doubt. So thank you, Natalie, for sharing that. So shifting gears a little bit with the Literacy Network of Greater Cincinnati. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this organization had been around for a while, maybe about 10 years or so, and had focused in Cincinnati around supplemental tutoring and support for students, elementary students in particular, that needed help with reading, right? They were not reading the grade level. And so this organization arranged to provide in-person tutoring in the classroom. And they also ran some adult education programs for those where English was not a primary language, for people that wanted to learn how to read, in the English, and so provide that. And they also did, some book distribution. So they did every 6 months a book collection, a book drive, and then they turned around and sort of distributed it out the same sort of day, right? So people would come out and they'd bundle up bags of books, and off they went. And so what they were struggling with, and again, this is I love sharing these stories because this is another Todd story. I get these because I never actually met Todd, unfortunately. So I get these from others. But Todd had come and met Michelle, and so they had connected and through Cincinnati, and one of our board members is there, and in this instance. This board member, knew a little bit about Little Free Library. She had one on her own, right? She was a literacy or reading, fanatic. And so as part of a strategic planning process, this organization, the Literacy Network of Greater Cincinnati, were brainstorming around things. And so they created or invited and had a summit, and they actually asked Todd to come. And share a little bit of what he was doing. And they brought, I think he brought like 4 or 5 libraries, much like they did in Calgary, I suppose, or how you funded. And anyway, the long and the short of it is, of the board, the board, they said, well, let's try this as an experiment, right? So they created an event, right? They took those 5 libraries that Todd had given them, and created literally a ribbon cutting and an activity, and they got some local businesses to support. And the response was overwhelming, enthusiastic. They had a number of people showed up, a little bit of kismet, right, in the sense of the local TV station showed up and captured what they were necessarily doing. And so they started getting more and more people. Outreach to them was like, what's this Little Free Library thing about? How can we help? So on and so forth. So they ended up saying and taking that and saying, let's transform how we go about doing book distribution, right? The outbound side of things, and let's use Little Free Library as an avenue for that. But they didn't necessarily have the financial wherewithal to do this, so they went and decided, how we're going to approach this is we're going to do outreach in the community to get financial support. So what they have done is they've done outreach to the local businesses, local nonprofits, and actual individuals to get them to sponsor Little Free Libraries and be responsible and be the steward. They now have a waiting list. They've actually have 100 Little Free Libraries installed. And as I said, they have a waiting list for more. What they discovered, and so the benefit for them as an organization, not only getting more books, right, more book access, and you can see the map, right? It started, where that green one is where the first one was, and you can see it is blown up across the greater Cincinnati area, but it also created better connections with other resources in the community. So more and more people began to recognize the Little Free Library, the Literacy, the Network of Greater Cincinnati, right? More people saw these boxes in the community. More people became aware of what they were trying to do in the community. And the boxes gave an actual physical touch point, a signpost, like a billboard, right, in the community about what they were necessarily doing. So Michelle, the incremental benefits, again, the books and access is great. They've been able to do that. But creating greater awareness around what they're all about and what they're doing in Cincinnati has been a huge secondary effect. And then the other aspect and benefit of all of this stuff is the deeper ties within the community. So, I mean, we all know, right? If we're raising money for nonprofits and whatnot, it's hard, right? And, you're doing outreach into the community and the like. Here was something that almost, not that it did work for itself, but it was created something new and different and allowed people to like get it and engage. And so they are better connected, not only with financial support, but other organizations that want to partner with them and bring their other services into their community, into their schools and the like. So the physical platform, right, of a Little Free Library has really helped the literacy network of Greater Cincinnati take off. They have now expanded. They're doing, they got another grant to do another 50 in the next year, as well as Michelle has started another subsidiary organization to build a book bank, so they can not only support their existing Little Free Libraries, but do other things with other nonprofit organizations in their community support from a book perspective. Excuse me a second. So the next case, and I want to double check. Oh, okay, I think we're time. You'll yell at me if I'm running late. Is rural. So, this is great. And again, this is, I share this, and this is that dynamic, right? That infectiousness aspect of the Little Free Library. A wonderful woman, Chris Humphreys, was on the board of the Ojai Valley Library Friends and Foundation. And she, again, an active reader, and I think this is one of her Little Free Libraries that she installed. And the Ojai Valley is a big agricultural area, and very rural for sure, but also an area that there was the opportunity to tap into what she calls, and I love this, the officialdom adverse audience, right? Those people, the immigrant communities that have either erratic working schedules we talked about, or there are language barriers, or again, not too comfortable in filling out paperwork in a very official looking building like a library. And so she tapped in and to the need to provide for this organization and tapped into her volunteer group that were looking for other things to do. I mean, the fact is, the library foundation is great. They ran, some regular events, but her volunteers, they're looking for more active ways to get involved beyond sort of their big brick and mortar, libraries. And so she encouraged those to necessarily to build them. She found partners. One of the obstacles in some instances for people is they perhaps cannot afford to buy one, and so but they're also not skilled necessarily to build one. Chris did a great job in connecting people with local craftsmen, hobbyists, right, that were interested in building things. And so the tapping into both the volunteer group of the Friends of the Library and then the crafts group of folks in the community, they were able to build and install over, I think the number is closer to 40 or 50 now. And what this did, she actually did, is also allowed for ways to better engage community. So she used the libraries as in sort of like, when people are geocaching, right, or Pokemon searching and all of that. She and the library created contests for kids using the distributed Little Free Libraries across the countryside to get better engaged with the library system itself. So there are scavenger hunts and things along those lines. They've also used these Little Free Libraries as an outreach platform to share the kinds of things that are going on at the institutional larger libraries. So it's a mutually reinforcing mechanism to share not only what's going on at the larger organizational library, but also what's going on with the Little Free Libraries. And in that instance, the Ojai Valley Library System has a map and a printed one that they provide in their libraries to give guidance and to where you can necessarily find things. So it's, again, another example of using the library to engage audiences and communities. And again, I don't know if you've ever been into Central Valley in California, But, you know, it is kind of like the plains, right, outside of Calgary. It's pretty rural for sure. So that's a third example. And again, this is a little bit longer. Chris has been doing things for about 4 or 5 years now in the Ojai Valley. You know, as I said, the Cincinnati example was just in the span of 2 years, as well as Chicago as well. And this is our last example, just in geography. And this is something recently, and this was granted through our Impact Library program, which is one of our grant programs that we run, where we provide a free library, a box and starter set of books and whatnot to locations. This is one of the few that we've done at a broader organizational level. So this was granted to the community college there on the Oglala, Dakota Community College. So as you can see here, I think there are 11 little locations. It's a fairly large community. And again, although I will say we've been hampered by the COVID pandemic, without a doubt, and it has slowed things down. But our partner there has used it as a way to provide, 7x24 access to books. I will be, to be clear, it's less about sharing and it's more about distribution, right? So she has access to books, but it gives people a touch point. And she basically, we encourage people just to take a book and keep it, right? And so we're working with her to figure out how best to do that. And it's an exciting project. We're trying to capture a little bit of data as we necessarily do this. The whole idea is to support not only students, but also their families. And through this location, get at book distribution at a broader family unit than what can necessarily happen at a community college level, which is typically necessarily the student. With that, I'm going to pause, and we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about some recent things. But I wanted to see maybe if there were any particular questions, because we're going to talk a little bit about our diverse books initiative. And I wanted to, if there were any particular things about the cases we talked, we can do that at the end as well. But if there's anything, I don't know, Natalie, if there's anything in the chat or anyone wants to ask a question, and if I've messed up your order, I apologize on things. But if anyone has a question now, I'll answer it. Otherwise, we can plow ahead.
Anyone have any questions? You could raise your
Maybe
hand
I'll
or talk.
just make a comment, Natalie, about, I was trying to pay attention to the chat. We get asked all the time to help people build little free libraries. People always anonymously send us notes. We get it on Facebook, everywhere possible. People are looking for us to build. In our case, and it sounds, Greg, in some of the examples that you shared, our mission and mandate as a nonprofit is around giving children the confidence and joy to read and to make sure they have the reading resources such as books and the special reading relationships that they need in order to achieve this really important grade 3 milestone. We love when people want to get a little free library, but we're not contractors, builders, we're not in the business of building them anymore. We did it initially because we needed to spread an idea. For anybody who's on the call, we don't even anymore have in our network builders or people who want to do this. You really are on your own, either to order a little free library from Little Free Library, which you can do, or find your own contractor, builder, someone to create one. And then we will step in and help you make sure that your hungry little free library, which I always say to people, they're like a puppy, they're so cute and you really want one. And then suddenly you realize, oh my goodness, they get dirty and you have to clean them and they're constantly hungry and you have to feed them. So we're there to help with the food, which is the books that we desperately want to get out into community. So send us an email once you get one built, and then we'll help make sure it's stocked. And I'm hearing, Greg, in your stories, you too sometimes have to put some context around there is a bigger reason for these little book boxes. It isn't just the box itself, it's for the mission and the cause and much bigger outcomes that you and these other organizations are hoping to accomplish. Is that fair to say?
Yes, no, without a doubt, Stacy, there's no question about that. And I do, just as a highlight, and then we can move on. On our website, there are plans and to build simple ones. You do not have to do complex sort of things. I mean, I would say it does take some, skills necessary to do some of those things, but I think many organizations and many people have found ways, of recruiting people to help them support it. And and it is, for a larger, broader, bigger, goal than just, sort of a decorative item, without a doubt. Definitely an important thing. Let's shift gears now and talk a little bit about our Read and Color initiative, which is we launched about a little over a year ago. So I think it's important, before we talk a little bit about that, is to understand a little bit of the origin for this program. So you may not be familiar with where Hudson, Wisconsin is, but we're about 20 minutes outside of or east of St. Paul, the twin cities of St. Paul and Minneapolis. And in 2020, in May, our Memorial Day, the city of Minneapolis was rocked by the murder of George Floyd and the civil unrest that unfolded from all of that. And the reason why it's relevant is the vast majority of our staff actually live in the city of Minneapolis or St. Paul. And we got to a situation of like, well, what can we do, right? How do we move forward as an organization, recognizing that there is a lot of hurt, and how do we go about trying to help heal, and how can we be better citizens in our communities to share perspectives and understanding and really help within the purview of what we're all about, right? So we were fortunate that we were approached actually by a couple of other organizations with a recognition that they needed to do something as well. They wanted to be able to help heal a city that was quite upset, and broaden awareness of the issues that confront us as a country, right? And I can only speak for the United States. But in terms of the racial injustice that folks have suffered and the rage and the like. And so putting our heads together, we realized that one of the things that we can do that kind of falls within our purview is to provide books and share perspectives and share books that come from diverse authors that are in many instances unheard or unknown. I mean, they're the practical aspect is in the research, 75% or more, I can't remember the exact number, of books for kids have the main protagonist as either white or an animal, right? You don't have protagonists that are Black or Native or Asian necessarily. So, and you mentioned, Stacy, earlier about windows that can become mirrors and sliding doors in which you can walk through necessarily. So we took it upon ourselves that, we are in a place where we can help provide resources for people to be able to help themselves, I suppose, and help broaden understanding and recognition that our lived lives may not be the same as others, and there's an opportunity to learn through reading of books. And so we came up with a Read and Color program. And as I said, we launched this in Minneapolis in last October. And it really is kind of four components. And again, really focused on the community level. in terms of how we sort of went about implementing this. I'm going to go kind of jump around a little bit. Now I'll start going through the order. So the first thing is we created what we call the Read and Color Pledge, and that's one of the things we'll invite you to do afterwards later today. You basically to commit to reading diverse books, and not only commit to reading them, but to commit to sharing them. And you don't need a little free library to be able to do that. You know, you can read a diverse book, whether it's a Black author, or a Native author, an LGBTQ author, or an Asian author, or a Latinx author. You read it, share it with your family member, share it with your brother, your sister, your parents, a work colleague, right? You don't need a little free library to do it, but what you do need to do is make a commitment to read and commitment to share. And so we encourage people to necessarily do that. The second thing we recognized is in communities that are grossly under-resourced, going back to that fact or whatnot, that even when there are books, it's unlikely that those books reflect the communities that they're in. So we made a commitment to put in new Little Free Library installations in communities that were underserved with a local partner, and that's a key aspect, right? We're not just doing this on our own. We found partners to which a literacy program plugged into their programming and could work and support their initiatives. So we will put in Little Free Libraries that look like the one that's on here on the screen. But the key thing was to provide in those libraries diverse books that reflected the community that we're necessarily in, and support that to get them up to speed for a year. The third component is we recognize that, like, hey, you know, we've got this network of Little Free Libraries around in the Twin Cities. We're going to provide, you know, book packages because there are communities in Minneapolis and St. Paul, right, that would benefit from the opportunity to read from diverse books, right? Give that diverse and different perspective. So to stewards that were enrolled and wanted to, we provided care packages, if you will, of diverse books to them. And the fourth component of all of this program is our recommended reading list, right? So you can't do all of this stuff without a list of books. So we're actually quite excited. We have a robust reading list. You can download it on our website. And it includes, as I said, Black authors, Asian authors, Latinx authors, neurodiverse authors, the LGBTQ community, Muslim authors, Jewish authors. I mean, our goal is really to try to provide any perspective that possibly can. And so I encourage you to do that. And that book list is informed. We have an executive advisory board panel of both authors, literacy educators, that provide input into that list. And to be clear, it's not the exclusive list, it's a recommended list. There are a lot of other books that would qualify, but we've been asked, and so we provide that list. So, launched in Minneapolis, everybody was really excited about that. We said, you know what? This is something we should take beyond our Twin Cities. And so that's what we started to do in 2021. So this year has been expanded to the cities that you see here: Tulsa, Boston, Detroit, DC, Kalamazoo, Ferguson, New York, Atlanta, and Phoenix. But the key thing here, and this is an important thing, it's all been through the kinds of partners that we have here. And I know you wouldn't necessarily recognize these names, but they're all folks that are doing either literacy initiatives, education initiatives, youth development initiatives, where a literacy program, a book access program can necessarily fit. And so through that, we've probably installed nearly 150 new Little Free Libraries in the last, we rolled out to the last, say, 6 months, and distributed over 20,000 diverse books so far this year. And here's one of our, I think this was a Detroit event that we installed. So it's been incredibly successful. And here's a more recent Atlanta installation, and it's been a huge success. We have support from global publishers like Scholastic, Penguin Random House, and HarperCollins, as well as smaller independent presses. We have a number of organizations that are doing more. So our goals moving forward are to expand to new cities and expand within existing cities, because, you know, again, a funny story. So the Minneapolis event, we launched this as I said, in October, I got a call later that week from a director from a family foundation that did a lot of work with local children education programs in the Twin Cities. And they said, we love the program. How do we help? How can we participate? And literally 2 weeks later, we got a grant to do 10 more libraries and books in the city of Minneapolis because of it. And again, it's sort of that infectious nature of things. So we're excited about what that program can necessarily be. So as I end, I mean, here would be our request, I mean, to take action if you're so inclined. I encourage you to go to littlefreelibrary.org, look at our programs called Read in Color. There's a page you can take the pledge. We encourage everybody to do that. We also encourage people to read and share diverse books. And again, we love it if you do it through a Little Free Library. We'd also encourage you to, even if that may be an obstacle, that doesn't prevent you from sharing a diverse book and sharing books in general. As we've talked about, you can build or buy a Little Free Library, install one, work with a local partner to do that. It might be a faith community, that might be a business, it might be a scout troop. You know, there are a variety of organizations that might be able to support. We encourage everybody to register. As I mentioned before, we are in the process of launching a mobile application that will only include people that are registered within our network. Our goal from that is to be able to create more access, more communications, and frankly, greater support through that application. It's not a requirement to do that. I mean, you can register with us and you don't need to be part of the mobile app and all those kinds of things. But we do think that that's going to be something that's pretty compelling to necessarily do. So, you know, and with 400 libraries, Little Free Libraries in Calgary, you guys are doing a wonderful job. But there's always the opportunity to do more. We have a board member that asks, so you know, when is too many? When do you hit the limit? It's like, well, I don't know. When somebody's too far away to walk away. I mean, what is it, a 10 to 15 minute walk, right? I mean, you know, maybe it should be like fire hydrants or something along those lines, right? So anyway.
Greg, we just had a question from Raspina. She is a part of Focus on seniors, and her question is about books that maybe bridge various languages or maybe are converted to audio, which I guess could be helpful for seniors with maybe visual impairments and that sort of thing. Maybe a fitting question hinging on your section on reading in color.
Sure. So to the multi-language programs, we do encourage, and depending on the community that we are installing, do provide you know, books in translation or dual language books. I will say most of those tend to be probably majority of them in Spanish, most likely, you know, here in the U.S. You know, every now and then there's a need for I can't remember, Karen, you know, Somali, you know, some other languages along those lines. And the other unfortunate aspect of those things is, unfortunately, those books are quite expensive, and they don't necessarily end up in the used book bins and, you know, that kind of thing, for sure. So it's a challenge, undoubtedly. From an audiobook perspective, I know that there are a number of organizations that do provide online access to those kinds of things. That's not something that we have necessarily included in our offering. Part of it is just a limited resources and focus aspect, but I do know that there are organizations out there that do those kinds of things without a doubt, including local libraries, right? I mean, you know, many of those have library card systems and have the ability to get on-load access to, you know, books on tape kinds of things and that kind of stuff. So, other thoughts, other questions? Apologize if I don't know, rambled on a little bit, but love to answer any questions that you might have about either what we're doing with Read in Color or the history of Little Free Library or any of the cases that we necessarily talked about. You don't have to ask now. Here is my contact information. So you can please feel free to email me if you'd like, you know, with any inquiries. I do encourage you, we have a Facebook page, just a general one, that's open to the overall public. You know, that's a great place to go and see what's kind of going on. I also encourage you to go to our website, littlefreelibrary.org, and sign up for our email and get a handle on the kinds of things that are going on at Little Free Library as well. I can assure you, you don't get inundated. I think our regular general email happens once a month. It's pretty straightforward, but we share some fun stories, some interesting things that are going on. We do, and I realize we don't do as many in Canada as we do in the US, but we are doing book giveaways and actually trying to work and do some more things with Scholastic, and in fact just did something with Royal Bank of Canada in terms of a giveaway as well. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to pause. I think it's definitely on the hour, right? 5:02, or was it 4:02 where you are? Willing to answer any questions you might have about us, or Little Free Library, or you can go on your merry way. You don't have to feel obligated to ask questions. That's not a prerequisite, for sure.
Well, we're very appreciative to get an update on all that you've been up to and all of the amazing work that stewards are doing around the world. I'm going to send you an email with a few examples of some of the ways we've brought Little Free Library alive in our community, and maybe someday you'll share the story of Calgary and what's happening in Canada in your presentations, as much as you share about Chicago and the beautiful Indigenous
Sure.
example. And we've had lots of fun with artists designing posters and maps and a passport program and some fun stuff. So
Right.
anybody have a question before Greg leaves us?
Just trying to scan through the chat here.
I think Natalie did a great job of catching them and answering them.
Right.
Or she could.
Yep. No, absolutely. You know what? And Stacy, I just as to your thoughts, I welcome that opportunity. Sometimes that's unfortunately you share the stories you get exposed to, without a doubt. So
Yeah.
we'd love that opportunity to do a deeper dive in terms of what you guys have necessarily accomplished in Calgary, without a doubt. We would definitely welcome that, for sure. And what a great group of people here, all wonderful, excited about things. And again, if there's anything, like I said, I encourage you to visit our website. There's a ton of resources. In fact, there's probably too much stuff there about how to start things or how to get going with your own. Sign up for our email newsletter. Like I said, we're going to try to do more in Canada from a book giveaway perspective and sharing Canadian stories. And yeah, I'd love to support in any way we can possibly do that.
Well, come visit us in Calgary someday if ever.
Yeah, I have to think about that. No, it's one of those things. Well, the world is, traveling is a bit of a challenge for sure. But yes, I would look forward to necessarily doing something along those lines, without a doubt.
Nice. Well, thank you also to everyone who joined us today. Sadly, I don't have any announcement for the next 369, because at this time we're going to take a little pause and give people a life beyond Zoom. But stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have more to share about this important initiative in the new year. So thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks so much. Natalie, are you good for the next meeting?